This is the most prevalent and probably impactful toxin that we're all exposed to, inevitably.
What if I told you that your morning routine is aging you faster than smoking? Or that those healthy foods you're eating on a daily basis are actually feeding the wrong bacteria in your gut, making you sicker? Today's guest just revealed why most people don't even have the bacteria that is keeping them in tip-top shape anymore. And he's going to reveal just how to get it back. Kiran, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited. We met down in person in Austin, and I feel like, two Midwest people coming together, let's go. Chicago meets Kansas, even though now I'm on the West Coast. But thanks for coming out here and making the long journey. And
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This is a beautiful space.
thank you. I mean, you are such a wealth of knowledge, and I've known about you for a very, very long time. I've been taking one of your original products that you kind of worked on, the Megaspores, for a very long time now, and it's really changed my skin health, my gut barrier, just all the things, and we'll jump into that. But what I really want to jump into right now is kind of a hot topic. GLP-1s, GLP-2s, can I say?
Yeah.
About that,
Sure.
can I just fill us in on GLP-1s,
Yeah.
GLP-2s, which I'm hearing about,
Okay.
and gut diversity?
There's a time and a place for GLPs. I think it can be life-saving for certain people if you are metabolically really unhealthy. And we're talking about the primary use of it, right? Which is for weight loss and blood sugar control. If you are really metabolically unhealthy, you're extremely overweight or even, scientifically significantly overweight, you've had insulin resistance for years and you've tried things, right? You've tried the diet lifestyle approach, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. You can't lose weight. You can't get your blood sugar under control. For that type of individual, it could be a lifesaver because being unhealthy, being obese, being immobile, having insulin resistance is a much bigger risk than the potential side effects of the GLP-1s, right? I think that's where it's applicable. Now, there are lots of people that want to lose 15 pounds and 20 pounds and 25 pounds even, right? They want to slim down for whatever reason. Using it for those, I think, will have a diminishing benefit because those individuals, there's a couple of potential issues, right? So number one is, what do they do? So GLP-1s are mimicking a natural process that occurs in our gut. This natural process is actually driven by beneficial bacteria and the consumption of fiber. So fiber, for example, in your diet does very similar things that GLP-1s do. So GLP-1s are these compounds, these peptides, if you will, that are released by cells in your lining of your gut called M cells. They release this peptide called glucagon-like peptide. That's why it's called GLP. And then they bind to a receptor. When they bind to the receptor, and the receptor is also in the lining of your gut, it triggers this cascade of events that upregulates satiety hormones. It slows down your transit time in your bowel, so the food sits in there a little bit longer, so you feel full more quicker. It also slows down the amount of sugar that you're absorbing. So the sugar curve after your meal, what we call postprandial insulin response or glucose response, is blunted to a certain degree. And there may be some anti-inflammatory effects as well. Right? So that there can be some benefits there. The big difference, and this is where the big difference comes in from how your natural GLP-1 works and how the synthetic versions work. Your natural GLP-1s, when your M cells release them, they come out, they bind to the receptor for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then they set off this cascade of events that controls your satiety hormones and all of that, which is all good for you. These are all things you need to happen. The synthetic versions sit on your receptor for 6 to 7 days, right? So it's continuously turning on that switch. So this drives people to not want to eat. This could drive the bowels to completely slow down, if not stop. One of the side effects is that permanent constipation.
For the rest of your life?
For the rest of your life, that's not reversible. It's a small percentage of people, but that can happen. There's issues of fat absorption and an increased risk in pancreatitis or liver dysfunction because you're taking what is a really important natural mechanism and you're just amplifying it, 1,000-fold, right? That receptor, that peptide sitting on that receptor for 7 days is a vast difference than it sitting on there for 2 or 3 minutes, right? So that's where things start to fall apart. And that's where you really have to make the choice. Like, what is the benefit of what the GLP is going to do? It's going to make you lose weight. It's going to bring down your blood sugar. It's going to control your insulin resistance. But is the potential side effects of that beneficial enough to be able to take the drug, right? So if you want to lose 15 to 20 pounds, I would say there's diminishing returns in doing it. But if you need to lose 100 pounds, then likely it's a good solution for you.
Wow. And I think the solution comes to if that person is willing to maintain that healthy lifestyle, because obviously they're going to have to make changes, right?
Yep.
They're not going to be, if you talk about sugar, that's like, maybe eating sweets or alcohol even, it might, decrease that. Are they willing to, when they're done taking those medications, like, are they willing to, keep that, going,
Yeah. Can they, so the big downside to it, even for the people that really need to lose the weight, right, is that the estimates are about 30 to 40% of the weight you lose is muscle, which is a problem, right? Because that, of course, as you lose muscle, you bring down your metabolic rate to begin with. So what tends to happen, or what can happen, is that let's say somebody loses 100 pounds, but they lose 30 pounds or 40 pounds of that 100 pounds is muscle. They didn't have a lot of muscle to begin with because they were metabolically unhealthy, right? So then they come off the drug. They're 100 pounds lighter. They feel good about it. Their blood sugar control is better, and so on. So some of their health parameters, maybe their cholesterol, lipids, and things like that are better. But then they come off the drug, and they haven't developed new habits, right? Because the drug is just suppressing their desire to eat. Right? That's what it does. It just completely knocks out your desire to eat. But when that desire comes back, your habits may and likely will go back to your old habits, right? So then if you go back to the old habits of how you were eating and you're not exercising, you haven't built a culture or a practice within yourself of exercising, resistance training, then now where you are is you're 100 pounds lighter, but you have 30, 40 pounds less muscle to burn calories for you throughout the day, which means that when the weight returns, you're not going to come back with 100 pounds of 70 pounds fat and 30 pounds of muscle. You're going to come back with 100 pounds of fat, right? So now you're going to end up worse than where you started off. And so the point that you make, I think, is really important. If you're going to use GLP-1s to improve your metabolic health, to lose weight, to get your blood sugar under control, it has to be paired with really good diet logic. It has to be paired with great workout culture. It has to be paired with improving your activity levels, with resistance training. It has to change. It has to be a driver of changing your habits, right? If not, you will go back to a worse position than you started off with.
I think that is such key, because I feel like what I'm seeing right now is people are using it as almost an excuse, like a hall pass of saying like, oh, I'm on this so I can eat whatever I want right now, even if it is small amounts.
Yeah.
And then think about that mindset and what they're setting themselves up for after they're off of it, or maybe they're going to be addicted to the drug.
Yeah.
So it's such a like catch-22, you know?
Is.
It's like, do you want this or do you want this? And everybody is individual, their needs too. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's this whole world that I'm like very confused about. Like, I mean, obviously I know peptides are in the gut in general with the gut diversity. And there's so many like foods that you can get peptides from.
Yeah.
And like restore that. Can you name some just like off the top of your head that are tangible?
Yeah, I mean, actually, bitters work a lot like peptides do, right? So digestive bitters, so berberine, for example, works very similarly to GLP-1 agonists, the synthetic drugs. If you look at hops, hops contains both bitter compounds and peptides. If you look at things like roots, like most roots and tubers that you can consume, so maca root or sweet potatoes, things like that, they will contain combinations of bitters and peptides.
Like what
And
about
they
a
do similar
squash?
things. Squash as well, right?
Squash
So
season.
yeah, anything fibrous. I love how excited you get
Yeah.
about squash.
Like, I love fiber.
That's awesome. My goal is to try to make fiber sexy again, right? Because it's one of the most important things you can consume, and we should talk about what it means to consume fiber or not consume fiber and what the data shows. But there's lots of foods, that are plant-based foods largely that contain peptides, that contain bitter compounds, that contain polyphenols that activate many of the same pathways that we're trying to activate with some of these drugs. And I think those can be, of course, incredibly beneficial. And if somebody has tried everything they can with diet and all that, and they can't get it together, and they're metabolically really unhealthy, then consider the GLP-1s. Of course, talk to your doctor, and it's a decision between the individual and their doctor. But if you don't change your mindset and your habits, and you don't bring on this routine of movement and exercise and all that, it's not going to help you in the long run.
I think also mindset.
Hmm.
Mindset. A lot of what I know even I've gone through it, especially this year. It's
Hmm.
been kind of a crazy year for me, family, work, all the things. And cortisol, stress
Yeah.
can really mess up the gut and can do such a number on your hormones, just weight fluctuation or just being able to have resistance to like your immunities in general. I think that's another thing that we should tap on, just not just food or just other lifestyle, but the mindset, like that lifestyle
Yeah.
topic.
You touched on cortisol, right? So cortisol is important in so many ways. We need it. We need cortisol, and we need curves of cortisol. We need spikes throughout the day. We need it to go down as we get towards the evening, so that we could sleep appropriately. There's something really important called a cortisol awakening response in the morning. When you wake up, you want cortisol to surge, right? Because cortisol gets you ready for the day. And those that have a blunted cortisol awakening response tend to be very groggy, and their brain doesn't kick on for hours from when they wake up. Um, so cortisol is an important thing, but cortisol also has a downside to it, right? So here's the difference between how we were designed and how we've created the environment to make cortisol almost a toxic compound, right? So this is our own natural hormone that's in our body that triggers certain responses that are really important. Cortisol elevation triggers something called a fight or flight response, right? The fight or flight response is really important because it protects us from things that may kill us, right? If we were back in the day and we're walking through the grasslands and we hear a rustling in the grass, our fight or flight response should kick on because we don't know what that danger is. And maybe we know from experience that every time we hear that kind of rustling in the grass, it's a potential predator, right? Maybe there's a smell associated with it, or like a feeling that you get, and those instincts kick on. And then what happens is your HPA axis, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, right? The hypothalamus starts first. It picks up the visual and auditory and other clues. It gets triggered. It releases compounds that cause your pituitary gland to release cortisol, right? Now cortisol is going to work for you to get you ready to fight or flee from that situation. So what do you need to happen for it to fight or flee? Well, you need blood rushing to your brain. You need blood rushing to your heart and your muscles. The reason you need blood rushing to those areas is because you have to oxygenate these areas that now have to be overtly active and ready to go, right? You don't need your digestion to be working, your immune system, it doesn't matter. Let's divert energy and all that from those areas. So you don't need to rest, you don't need to digest, you don't need to repair anything, right? What you need to do is fight or flee. So let's get as much blood to your muscles, to your heart, to your brain, to your eyes, and so on as we can. Now, cortisol helps channel and make all of that happen. The problem is the way it does it is through inflammation,
Ugh,
right?
come on.
So there's this massive release of what we call catecholamines. Catecholamines will drive all of this inflammation because inflammation is circulation,
Right.
right? So if I like rub your arm and it gets red, the redness is just blood coming to that area, right? So inflammation drives circulation. So you got blood coming to your brain, your eyes, your heart, and your body doesn't care that you have a massive elevation of inflammation because it's saying you're going to die if you don't fight or flee from the situation, right? So you go through this massive curve, cortisol goes way up. The other thing that cortisol does is some of it gets dumped into the gut, where microbes in the gut will digest part of the cortisol. They'll send the digestive byproducts of cortisol to your kidneys. Your kidneys will increase the release of potassium and sodium into your bloodstream to get more water into your circulation so that your blood pressure goes up, right? And why do you want the blood pressure to go up? Because you want your body to pump more blood to your brain and your heart and so on. So you're going through this whole thing where you're now super inflamed, right? Your brain is inflamed, your heart is inflamed, your muscles are inflamed, and your blood pressure is high through the roof. But you're very acute, you're ready to deal with things. And let's say you run away from the danger. You run 100 yards and you get to safety. You climb up on the top of a rock and you sit there and you go, okay, that was really nothing. It was like a bunny rabbit in the grass, right? And now you can calm down from it, right? Because what you want then is that cortisol, which was going up during the fight or flight response, and driving all of these physical changes. You want that cortisol to start coming back down so you could start relaxing, right? You don't want to be in fight or flight anymore. You want to go towards that rest, digest, that parasympathetic. So then cortisol gets bound by all these receptors in your body, and then the inflammation comes down, the heart rate comes down, the blood goes back to other areas as well, like your digestive tract and so on. So that's supposed to happen. But here's what happens in the modern world, right? We have really bad anticipatory stress, right? Where we are triggering the same fight or flight response. So physiologically, our body thinks we're going to die. And so we have to escape, right? But it's from a tweet, or it's from somebody in traffic, right? Or it's from an email that you got in the morning about your kids or this, that, and the other. Like whatever it is, it's all non-threatening things. But because we ruminate on it and because we allow it to create this anticipatory stress, this what if, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And what if that happens, right? And so as a result of that, what tends to happen is we remain in this fight or flight anxious state where your brain is inflamed, your heart is inflamed, blood is rushing to your muscles and all that. But through inflammation, your blood pressure is high, and you're negating basic functions like digestion, immune system, and all that. We remain in that state for hours, if not days. Right? So that is a very dangerous place to be. In that case, which is in the modern world, cortisol is toxic to us.
You know that moment when you're craving something crunchy, but also trying not to eat junk? Same here, folks. That's why I'm obsessed, and our family is, with masa chips. They're made with just 3 clean ingredients: organic corn, 100% grass-fed beef tallow, and sea salt. That's it. No seed oils, no weird stuff, just real crunchy goodness rooted in tradition. And trust me, they actually taste amazing. My pantry is never without them, and the best thing of all, guys, my family actually eats them. Holla frickin' Luya. So if you're trying to snack smarter without giving up flavor, give masa chips a try. Head to masachips.com and use my code ToxicFreeKB for 25% off your first order today. That code again is ToxicFreeKB. Your snack game just got a serious upgrade. Let's talk about light stimulation. Whether you're looking to boost collagen, reduce inflammation, improve recovery, or just feel more grounded and energized, LightStim's FDA-cleared LED devices are a game changer. I personally love that their technology is backed by over 20 years of science and trusted by doctors, professionals, and over 1 million people at home. This isn't just about beauty, folks. It's about healing at a cellular level. And with LightStim's full body LED bed and handheld devices, you can experience the benefits of light stimulation, also known as many people like to call it red light therapy, even though we know it's just pure, beautiful light stimulation from the comfort of your home. So are you ready to try it for yourself? Use my exclusive code ToxicFreeKB at checkout for 10% off your order at lightstim.com. Your body and your skin will thank you. Using a sauna is a key part of my wellness routine and healing journey as I continuously recover from mold exposure and boost my blood circulation for my Raynaud's. Detoxing and sweating is absolutely essential, and my Sunlighten infrared sauna has become an amazing game changer in my life. It helps me sweat out toxins, support my overall immune system, and most importantly, calm my central nervous system throughout my healing practice. We could all use a little more of that, could we? The gentle, low EMF infrared heat helps me relax, de-stress, and feel like myself again. If you are looking for a natural way to reduce your toxic load, boost circulation, and promote deep relaxation overall, I cannot recommend Sunlighten enough. It's been an essential part of my personal healing, and I know it can support you too. Head to toxicfree.com, go to my shop page where you'll see the Sunlighten ad, and use code TOXICFREEKB at checkout for up to $1,400 in savings on your sauna. Guys, yes, $1,400 in savings. Your body and your nervous system will absolutely thank you. Again, that code is TOXICFREEKB for up to $1,400 off. You can also find the easy to click through link in the description below. Send me your sauna pics. Guys, let's start sweating together. Okay, that was a long description, but I could relate to it on so many different parts. Like even my blood test has shown like it's the modern world. Like I'm go, go, go. And it's almost like I'm addicted to the cortisol. Like I'm addicted to it. I'm like, I can go more. Like I had this whole motto, like, what would Taylor do? Like, you know, like I can be like her, like just like you, like I go, go, go. My husband also, his job, like go, go, go. We've got 3 kids. I've got dogs. You know, I also have to run a household. Like my job, like my family, like my past, you know, all the things, it all builds up and then it's like becomes a weird addiction. It's like being addicted to like matcha or coffee or something. Totally. And then you don't know how to rest and digest. Yeah. And it is a problem. And as I, you know, live in this life longer and longer, I'm like becoming so aware of it. And I'm like, I need to take a bath and I need my body to realize I'm taking a bath. Yeah. It's crazy. So what do we do about that? Like when it becomes toxic, what do we do about that? Because it's harming our health. Yep. What do we do?
There's a couple of things. So there are some behavioral things you can do, right? So the first thing is the things that create stress in your life, or the things that create anxiety in your life. There's something called cognitive behavioral therapy that can really help with reframing what the impact of these stressors are. We tend to have a doom and gloom scenario in our minds, right? Either things are amazing and we're so excited, or it's like, holy shit, everything's falling apart. Yeah. Right? And in your mind, you create this domino effect of all these things that are, if this happens and that's going to happen, then that's going to happen, and everything's screwed, right? So we need to reframe the impact of every given little thing that occurs. And one of the things that I like about cognitive behavioral therapy is that it allows you to sit with stress and be okay with the stressor, right? In fact, you challenge it and you tell it to bring it on, right? So it's like if something gives you anxiety or stress and the anxious feeling is coming up, you don't try to fight the anxious feeling, you accept it. And you go, it's fine. I can be anxious, right? Let me just sit here and sit in this anxiousness for a moment. Do you realize that nothing happens, right? That you're not dead, that the world isn't falling apart, that the ceiling isn't falling down. You sit and accept that these cycles can occur, that problems can occur, but you get hyper focused on solutions and what you can do, and then what can you control and what you can't control. You put the things you can't control out to the side and really work on the things you can control, right? So that's a whole like mindset thing that people can work on. And I'm not an expert in that. I just do it. Right. And I've read a lot about it, but people can work with therapists and psychologists and all that to help that mindset. But look up cognitive behavioral therapy. That can really help. And then the second thing is there are compounds that can help, right? So if you take ashwagandha, for example, or L-theanine, or saffron, right? These things can really help with balancing that cortisol fight or flight response. There are also psychobiotics. So these are probiotics that shifts your brainwave activity, right? So this one is really important because And I think both you and I are driven by similar things, right? Because we're driven people, we want to get stuff done, and in fact, like you said, you thrive on the adrenaline like movement, right? And so do I. I can perform under those conditions well, and so what we tend to do is we tend to meet life with a high frequency brainwave, right? So a high frequency brainwave is like a beta wave. That's what's turning on in your brain when you're like focused on something and you're very diligent and you're coming up with content or you're writing plans or you're doing whatever you're doing, right? You're working on stuff for the kids or whatnot. You're in a high frequency brainwave. That's not the brainwave you want to welcome stress into or stressors, right? So here's what happens. If I'm sitting down and I'm working and I'm in a high frequency brainwave, I'm reading papers and connecting the dots on scientific thoughts and so on, and then I get a notification of something that could be a stressful thing. And if I meet that notification or that issue in that high frequency brainwave, my brain is going to explode that and make it seem much worse than it is, right? Because your brain is firing too much almost, right? What you really need to practice is there's a stressor here, you're in a high frequency brainwave, meeting that stressor in a low frequency brainwave. Your brain should automatically switch to go, okay, let me calm down and see what this is, right? Now, here's the practice that makes that happen, and this is why the people practice this: meditation, right? So meditation, what it does scientifically is it actually allows you to instantaneously tap into a low frequency brainwave, right? When you're met with something stressful. So I could be working diligently and very focused and something stressful happens over here. I can turn to it and my brain switches to like a alpha wave or theta wave. That's a low frequency brainwave, right? And when I meet the stressor with a low frequency brainwave, it is much more suppressed in terms of its impact on me. Now, I would recommend, as a result of that, practicing some form of meditation, whether it's saying mantras to yourself, just deep diaphragmatic breathing exercises in the morning when you wake up and at night before you go to bed and so on. Those can be really impactful. But these psychobiotics, right, there's a strain called Bifidobacterium longum 1714. Right? Bifidobacterium B longum. So people can look for B longum 1714. It's found, for example, in the Just Thrive Health, the Just Calm product, or in Microbiome Labs, it's called Zen Biome. That strain has been shown in clinical studies not only to blunt the cortisol curve whenever you're having these cortisol spikes, reduce the type of inflammation that cortisol creates, but it also switches your brainwave when you encounter a stressor. So it's like meditation in a capsule, which is really powerful, right? So we have these tools, right? We have the cognitive behavioral therapy, the reframing of issues. We have meditation that we can do. We have compounds like L-theanine, like saffron, and B vitamins alone, like B6, B12, improve cognitive function and stress management. And then you have these psychobiotics as well, right? So people should be throwing a number of things at it because the accumulated stress is probably one of the most harmful things for your system overall.
I agree 100%. I mean, you just threw a lot of stuff out there and like biotics. Let's just talk about the whole family of biotics. There's prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics. Now we've got psychobiotics. There's like these little like hyper kids over here that just need to calm down. So the difference between all of them, pro, post, and then you kind of explain the psycho ones.
Yeah. Probiotics have a definition. They are defined as a live microorganism when administered at inadequate amounts confers a health benefit to the host, right? So what does that mean? Let's interpret it. Number one, a true probiotic has to be an organism that's alive in the bottle, in the capsule, and then also when you take it. So it has to function alive in your system, right? So that is a really important part of the definition. In fact, because most quote-unquote probiotic products on the market could not prove that they were alive when you ingested them, in Europe, they didn't allow any of these products to be called probiotics, right? So they would call them bacteria products or other generic names. They couldn't use the term probiotic because there's a scientific definition for it. So probiotic has to be a live microorganism, and when administered in adequate amounts, what that means is you have to have some clinical evidence that when you give it at a particular dose, it confers a health benefit to the host, right? So for probiotics, it has to be live, it has to get to the intestines alive, and there has to be some clinical data showing that they have a benefit to the host. A postbiotic can be two things. The more general way that the industry has used the term is that it's a compound that microbes make, right? So butyrate, for example, right? So there's products like tributyrin, for example. There are butyrate supplements or certain types of phospholipids or even TUDCA, TUDCA. We were talking about that earlier. Those are all compounds that are made by microbes, right? So TUDCA comes from microbes breaking down bile into secondary bile salts. Those all have important function in the gut and in the immune system and so on, and those can be considered postbiotics. The other definition for postbiotics are bacteria that work when they're dead. So then the question is, well, how are they working when they're dead? Well, there are lots of bacteria when you kill them. There's components of their outer cell membranes and all that that activate an immunological process. The Bifidolongum 1714, the psychobiotic I mentioned, is actually a postbiotic as well, meaning that even if you killed it, because of these unique carbohydrates it has on its outer cell membrane, those unique carbohydrates, which are there if the bacteria is dead or alive, are the ones that trigger the immunological responses that lead to the cortisol dampening effect, the brainwave shifts, and so on, right? So postbiotics can be compounds that are made by bacteria or dead bacteria themselves that have an effect. And then prebiotics are specific carbohydrates that feed beneficial bacteria, right? Now, they're different than fiber usually. So fiber are less complex carbohydrates, but we generally don't digest fiber. We can't break them down for energy or anything else. They will go into your large bowel where microbes will break them down into really useful compounds. Prebiotics, however, are much more complex little carbohydrate structures that only certain bacteria can break down. Lots of different bacteria can use fiber, but prebiotics typically target a small handful of bacteria because they're so complicated in their structure. Bacteria need certain enzymes to break them down.
Are you ready to elevate your skincare game? Meet Delavie Sciences, a revolutionary skincare brand blending cutting-edge science with natural ingredients to create products that truly deliver. With proprietary formulas like their award-winning Ionia line, Delavie Sciences harnesses the power of space-age technology and advanced research to target fine lines, wrinkles, and skin damage. I absolutely love this line so incredibly much, y'all. I use it daily and have noticed that my fine lines that were starting to form have been dramatically reduced in appearance. Yes, naturally. This is definitely a hooray moment for me. I also love that their products are dermatologically and clinically tested, as well as a toxin-free. Perfect for anyone embracing a healthier and toxic-free lifestyle. Guys, I don't approve everything, but this I definitely approve. By listening to Toxic Free with KB, you'll get exclusive access to, get this, 25% off all Delavie Science products by using code TOXICFREE, because your skin deserves science, not shortcuts. Once again, visit delaviesciences.com today and use code TOXICFREE for 25% off and experience the future of skin health. To hear more about this innovative skincare line, listen to my entire interview with one of the founders of Delavie Sciences, Dr. Kyle Landry. I think one of the hardest things to incorporate change into our lifestyles is probably our cleaning products, because a lot of people think just because that smell is coming out, that means it's clean. But truly, y'all, you've heard me talk about this time and time again, that smell could actually be a toxin. So something that I've actually incorporated in our household, and I actually send the kits to all of my friends and family members as gifts time and time again, is Branch Basics products. Guys, Branch Basics never set out to sell soap. They truly are on a mission to help people create healthy homes and experience the power of pure. I am totally on this game as well. And someone that has been highly sold is our house cleaner. She has helped toss the toxins with me, and she uses Branch Basics for all of our cleaning necessities at our house. And let me tell you, we don't always live in a clean space. We've got 3 kids, 2 dogs, I've got a husband, so we've got a lot of things to clean up. 3 of the things that have really popped into my shopping cart lately are their new formula laundry detergent. Their toxic-free candle, because baby girl loves a good bath time and sitting by the candles at night when she enjoys her good veggie bowls, and also their hand soap. But 2 of the staples that I live by in our household, and trust me when I tell you I can use this for everything, even on my pups, is their oxygen boost and their liquid gold concentrate. So guys, I'd like to help you get started on your cleaning by giving you 15% off all starter kits. And also, guys, this applies to their hand soap and their toxic-free candle, all the things. Not only will you get your starter kit, but you can get a whole bunch of other items to stock up on. Give the gift to yourself and use my code over at Branch Basics, which is Toxic-Free KB. Guys, again, if you want 15% off, use Toxic-Free KB. Let's be real. Finding a snack that's actually clean and delicious, not easy these days. That's why I'm obsessed with Vandy Crisps. They're made with real ingredients, no weird stuff, and they seriously deliver on flavor. It's the perfect go-to for when you want a snack without second guessing what's in the bag. My youngest son says that they're like thick, flat French fries, and he even squirts a little ketchup on them and off he goes. I actually sent my husband on one of his recent long journey 42-mile hikes with them, and he said it really put the spot when times got tough. So I think you'll all enjoy them too. And because you're part of the Toxic-Free with KB community, you get a little something extra. Use code Toxic-Free KB for a discount at checkout on your first purchase. Grab yourself some original classics or their newest French onion flavor. Let me know which you like the best. Okay, so we're bringing back fiber, making fiber sexy again.
Yes.
I'm a big believer. You know how there's this hype about like protein. I think fiber is the key. Like I truly believe like people are not getting enough fiber and they're getting too much protein at times. So let's kind of dive into that.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly getting an imbalance of it, right? So there's lots of influencers that are pushing 100, 200 grams of protein a day, depending on your body weight. And that's fine. Like taking protein is good. But if you take protein and not enough fiber, what you tend to do is shift the type of fermentation that occurs in your gut. So for people to understand, there's like 2 big categories of fermentation in your gut. There's proteolytic fermentation and saccharolytic fermentation, right? The names aren't as important, but think proteolytic as protein fermentation. Now, you need proteolytic fermentation because it breaks down things and it ferments proteins and protein compounds to a certain degree. But the problem with it is it also creates inflammatory byproducts. There are compounds like P-cresol, for example, or even ammonia, right? So if you're doing too much proteolytic fermentation, you're creating these inflammatory compounds. Now, saccharolytic fermentation is a breakdown of fiber and plant-based carbohydrates and polyphenols that yield really important things like short-chain fatty acids that are very anti-inflammatory, that are very reparative. They heal things. They heal the lining of your gut. They improve your metabolic health. They do all of these important things. So you want to lean more towards saccharolytic fermentation. You need both, right? It's not one or the other. You need both. But where you really will be the most optimally healthy is if you have a little bit more saccharolytic fermentation than you have proteolytic. Now, what tends to happen if you go full bore protein and you're not paying attention to your fiber, you will shift your microbes in your gut towards more proteolytic fermentation. And then that becomes the predominant type of fermentation that you have that creates a lot of inflammatory compounds, and it's not necessarily good. So if you take the average American, they're eating about 8 grams of 8 grams of fiber per day, right? The typical American eats somewhere around 20, 25 grams of protein. So, and that's the standard American diets, right? So we're not talking about people who are conscious about what they're putting into their system. They're just eating whatever. So inevitably, you're already a 3-to-1 ratio where you have 3 times more protein than you have fiber. Then you listen to a lot of your influencers and all that, and they're like, you got to get 1 gram per pound of body weight, right? So then somebody who's like 150 pounds, like, holy crap, I got to eat 150 grams of protein. So now they're going nuts on the protein, right? And they're getting 150 grams of protein and 8 grams of fiber, right? So they're like 20-fold lower on the fiber than they are on the protein. And then that really pushes them towards more proteolytic fermentation. And although they're getting some benefit from the protein in terms of muscle synthesis and satiety and all that, they're also producing some of these inflammatory compounds as a side effect. And they're negating the growth of some of the most important microbes within your system, right, which are only fed by fiber and polyphenols, right? So that imbalance becomes really, really a problem, and that can create toxicity.
Let me ask you, so these people that are like so hyped up on the carnivore diet, right? That's a really good example. The carnivore diet, and like I've heard people even say like, "Oh, I have my meat bowl like in the morning, lunch, dinner," and I'm like, "Where are your greens? Like, where's the color? Where's like my mom used to always say, she still I think does, eat the rainbow.
Yep.
Eat the rainbow." I remember that as a child. Like, make sure your plate has like a bunch of different colors on it. And now like it's like I see a bunch of beige in my life amongst everything that is served. It's like it's just so out of control. So what do you think about that when it comes to diets?
Yeah.
I don't like to use that word, but like eating patterns.
Yeah.
The carnivore diet, this like kind of like skewed view. I know there's a lot of like influential people out there. I think we all know who we're talking about, who's all about the meat, which is great. If you get a really good, clean source, it's awesome. But, research has actually shown, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you eat a lot more plant-based foods, that can really, really benefit you in the long run.
It's a really important topic, right? Because diet is so interesting to me because people get very tribalistic about diet. Like science and all that goes out the door for whatever reason, whatever diet you've bought into, whether you're a vegan or you're a carnivore or you're keto or whatever it may be, right? Whatever the label is for the diet. When people buy into the diet, they become very tribalistic about their diet. And everybody else is wrong and full of crap. My diet is the way to be, right? And then they write a book and then all this stuff. So let's just talk about diet for a second. Let's talk about what the research shows with regards to diet. And I think the whole carnivore thing is an overcorrection for decades long of blaming meat for lots of health ailments, right? So there was absolutely this issue in the 50s and 60s and 70s where people started overcorrecting and blaming meat as a primary source of cardiovascular disease risk and so on, right? And that was based on erroneous data at the time, erroneous information. And so then meat somehow became villainized. And so now we're trying to overcorrect where we're going, meat is not only not a villain, but it's the best and most important thing you can consume. And what if it's that good, maybe you just eat only meat, right? And so like it's gone in that full spectrum the other direction. So where the data really shows is where you get the healthiest outcomes is a Mediterranean style diet. It's the most well-researched type of diet with all kinds of studies behind it, randomized controls, longitudinal studies, all different types of studies with millions upon millions of people in the published data. And what it shows is it's a really good balance of high volumes of fiber, plant-based materials, polyphenols, the rainbow, like you said. The rainbow are basically carotenoids and polyphenols that are found in fruits and vegetables. And we'll explain what happens with those in the body that makes it so good for you. And then lean, healthy meats and healthy fats, right? A Mediterranean-style diet is absolutely the healthiest diet you can eat, and that's what the science shows. Now, if you overcorrect and you go full carnivore, what you're going to end up doing is dramatically reducing the diversity in your gut microbiome, right? Because you're eliminating fiber, you're eliminating polyphenols, you're eliminating all these really important plant-based compounds that the most important groups of microbes in your gut require to flourish. And they also produce compounds for you that you really need, right? One example of that, polyphenols. Polyphenols are, things in grapes and berries and cherries and all that. So if you look at all the colored fruits and vegetables, like your mom used to say, eat the rainbow, right? The reason for that is those color compounds are carotenoids. They're antioxidants. They have all of these functions in the body. So when you consume them, there are microbes in your gut that will convert them to compounds like urolithins. Now, what do urolithins do? Urolithins help repair the engines of your cell. These are the mitochondria of your cell, right? So every cell in your body, with the exception of red blood cells, has hundreds, if not thousands to tens of thousands of mitochondria, right? These mitochondria are generating the energy that the cells need to function and do the job that they do. If the mitochondria start to die down or die off, the cells die off, and then the organ that the cells make up dies off as well. In fact, that's one of the best views of aging. It's called the mitochondrial free radical theory of aging. What does that mean? That means mitochondria as an engine, as it's making energy, creates an exhaust, right? Just like your car creates an exhaust when it's making energy. The exhaust are free radicals and superoxides. That exhaust is toxic to the cell. So it kills off the cell and it kills off the mitochondria. Now you might go, well, what the hell kind of design is that where we have an engine of the cell that's killing itself, right? Well, we have systems in place to exhaust those toxins. So we have glutathione, which people have heard of. We have superoxide dismutase. We have catalase. All of these are natural enzymes and natural systems that elevate the ability to detoxify the exhaust that your cells are producing, right? How do these things increase? When you consume polyphenols and plant-based materials like fiber, right? So your cells are counting on your consumption of fiber and polyphenols to help create the compounds that'll repair the cells as they get damaged from the exhaust that they're creating, right? So the engines in your cell, the mitochondria, which are critically important for your function, the only way we can fix them is by these products that are made by bacteria when they break down plant-based materials in the gut. Now, this doesn't mean you need to become a vegan, right? And people automatically go into extremes, right? This means a balanced diet. This means fiber, polyphenols, plant-based materials are a critical part, so you don't want to eliminate them from your system.
Yeah. And like I always think, my mom, and I always think, okay, how can I get the most benefit from my food first?
Yep.
And then when I can't get it from the food, clean sources of food, I then will supplement. Because right now, I'm definitely my mother's daughter. Like my refrigerator and our backup refrigerator, like I will try all the supplements. Like I have all the supplements in the fridge and I'm like, I could probably live off of supplements. But then again, you have to go back to food as the source, clean food as the source and the knowledge behind that. So what I like to tell everyone when it comes to fiber is like finding something that works for you. A couple of things. Play around with it, Brussels sprouts, anything that's in season. And please, dear God, do not over sauce it, but leave it in its most true original form as possible. And that will truly benefit you. So I kind of want to throw that one out there as well. But let's jump into the hot topic of LPS. Little pieces of shit.
And if you don't mind, let me. I like that. I've never used that acronym before. And fiber will play a role in LPS as well. I'll explain how. But I do want to mention something so people really wrap their head around why fiber is so sexy and important, right? So what if I were to tell you that I discovered a compound that is really quite magical, right? That if you take enough of it, it can cut your risk of dying from all causes, right? Outside of getting hit by a bus, we're talking about all clinical causes, right? It can cut your risk of dying from all causes by upwards of 45%, almost in half over your lifetime, right? And all you have to do is take this compound. Most people go, what the hell is that and how do I get it, right? Now, a compound that can cut your risk of dying from all causes by almost 45% is a big claim. So then you might go, well, that's a big claim. It's an extraordinary claim. There must be extraordinary evidence to support it. And I go, well, yes, there is. There are over 180 published studies to support it. There are 150 million person years worth of data behind it. So there's tons. I mean, like over 1 million subjects in randomized in meta-analysis studies, right? So you go, wow, okay, that's amazing. That is a lot of scientific backing. I could take this thing and it'll cut my risk of dying from all causes, any disease state, by almost 50%, right? 45 to up to 45%. What is this miracle thing?
Yeah.
This miracle thing is fiber,
Ah.
right? So fiber, for every 10 grams of fiber you add to your daily diet, it reduces your all-cause mortality, which is dying from anything, by 10%, up to around 40, 45 grams. Right after that 40, 45 grams, that drop in mortality rate risk kind of flattens out a little bit. But from 0 to 45%, it's a straight line, right? So if you're eating a standard American diet and you're eating 7, 8 grams of fiber a day, and you just start adding 10 grams of fiber more per day to your diet, I'll talk about how you do that.
Yeah.
Once you get to around 45 grams per day of fiber, you have cut your risk of dying from all causes by 45%, right? And you've cut your risk of dying from cardiovascular disease and diabetes by almost 50%. That's insane. There isn't a drug or anything that does that, right?
Yeah.
And it's freaking fiber.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
I know.
Right? It's psyllium husk. It's sweet potatoes. It's just the simplest things. So how do you do that? Well, okay, if you're on a standard American diet and you're consuming 8 to 10 grams of fiber a day, I wouldn't go 45 grams tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
I would add roughly 3 to 5 grams to each day for a week, right? So if you're at 10 grams, let's say, I would go to 13 to 14 grams every day for the next week. Then the following week, I would go 18, 19 grams every day for a week. And then I'd go 20, 25 grams and so on, right? And like you said before, I try to get at least half my fiber from food. And then the other half I supplement just to make sure I'm hitting the right amounts, right? And the easiest way that I supplement with it is good old psyllium husk, right? It's a mix of soluble, insoluble. It's about 70% soluble, 30% insoluble. I take about an 8 to 10 grams scoop of it before every meal, right? You just dump it in the cup, mix it up, drink it down. It's not a great experience. Most of it doesn't taste that good, right? I use like just the plain old organic India psyllium husk, right? It's clean. There's nothing else in it. It doesn't dissolve really well. You don't want to let it sit in the glass of water too long. It'll start gelling up. But you just mix it in, drink it down before each of your 2 largest meals. So you're getting about 10 grams before each of those meals. That way you're locking in 20 grams right there. And then if you eat a somewhat diverse diet, you're going to get another 20, 25 grams. So you're hitting your 40-gram total. The beauty is that 10 grams that you take beforehand, you know what it does for you? It does exactly what the GLP-1 agonists do. Yep.
Sweeps the house clean.
It does. It slows down that gastric emptying, makes you feel full faster. It blunts that glucose curve after the meal. It increases fat burn. It does all of these magical things, and then it allows you to live longer too.
So psyllium husk, a hot hack for you. I actually do this because I travel quite a bit. I have on my blog, I created a binder bread with psyllium husk in it. So it does taste better. And I add protein in there instead of flour. I use protein as the flour. So that's like a nice hot hack for people if they don't want to do the whole like scooping in the water and like chugging it down, because some people do have a problem with that. It does get stuck and lodged in their intestine. So you have to be very careful about like the psyllium husk, but that is a really, really good hot tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to get that recipe then.
Yeah.
Did you say you travel with that as well? You make it and you travel with it?
Oh, yeah. I've got like long haul flight travel hacks. Like
nice.
I'll fill you in on everything. Yeah, super easy. I mean, it's just like you just slice a little bit. Like all you need is like with that dense piece of bread, as I call it, you just need a little slice like every morning.
It's like a little chunk. Yeah.
Like a chunk. So I'll share it with you for sure. But let's move into the little pieces of shit. The lipopolysaccharides, as we like to call them, the LPSs. Why are those so like, I don't want to use the word catastrophic, but just like a big warning sign in our life? If you get tested and you have LPS in your system, why?
Yeah. What I love about your podcast is called Toxic-Free, right? And so you end up talking a lot about toxins. This is the most prevalent and probably impactful toxin that we're all exposed to, inevitably, right? This isn't a toxin that you can get away from because it's an endotoxin, which means that it's made within your system, right? So a mold toxin, for example, in your home is an exotoxin. It comes in from the outside. And step one in dealing with an exotoxin is remove yourself from the toxin or remove the toxin from you, right? It's harder said
Oh,
to
yeah.
do than it is said, but nonetheless, that's step one. But with an endotoxin, you can't remove yourself from it, so it's always there. So what is this thing? Well, okay, about half the bacteria that live in your system, especially your gut, are called gram-negative bacteria. What that means is they don't have a cell wall structure. They have only like a loose cell membrane, right? So like everyone remembers these lipid bilayers that we see on our cells, right? So they have this cell membrane, but within the cell membrane, they have this compound called LPS, lipopolysaccharide. Now, the reason it's called a lipopolysaccharide is because the lipo part is it's a fatty acid. So it's got these long fatty acid tails, so it looks like fat or triglycerides or anything fat from diet, right? And then the top of it is a carbohydrate head, right? So that's what it means. That's why it's called lipopolysaccharide. Um, it's stuck within the bacteria, and it's about half the bacteria that exists in your microbiome. So you're constantly making it. Your microbes are constantly making it, and when it's in the bacteria, it's not really a problem, right? The bacteria use it for communication. It uses it to binding to things and so on. So the bacteria has need for it. The problem is when the bacteria dies. And bacteria are continuously dying in your system, especially when you eat food and bile is going through and pancreatic enzymes and hydrochloric acid. All these things will kill bacteria, right? So bacteria are continuously dying. When they die, they kind of explode. And when they explode, they release this lipopolysaccharide into the lumen of your gut. The lumen is the part of the tube where the food goes through, right? And in that lumen is a mucus layer. So it gets stuck in the mucus layer. Now, if you have a healthy system, if you have a diverse microbiome, you've got the right kind of immune response in your gut, you've got a healthy liver, there's a number of checkpoints that negate any negative effect of this LPS being released in the lumen, right? So if the LPS is released in the lumen, number one is some of the microbes, the beneficial microbes can break it down so they don't cause you any harm. The second defense mechanism is you've got these enzymes in this mucus layer called brush border enzymes. In particular, it's called alkaline phosphatase that neutralize the LPS. That's if you have a healthy gut lining. So that's step number 2 in protecting you from LPS. Step number 3 is something called secretory IgA, right? It is an immunoglobulin that your healthy immune cells make in response to beneficial bacteria in your gut. So they release these immunoglobulins into the mucus lining so it can bind the LPS so it's not acting as a problem. The fourth protection is if it does get across the lining of the gut and ends up in circulation, if you have a healthy liver, your liver makes something called HDL3, which is a compound, which is a good cholesterol compound. We're all familiar with HDL, right? High density lipoprotein, which is what we have always termed as the good cholesterol. There's a version of that good cholesterol called HDL3 that the liver makes that can go and bind up this LPS, right? So in a healthy individual with a really diverse, strong microbiome, good, healthy immune system, a good barrier, meaning no leaky gut, when the LPS is released, there's at least 4 mechanisms to neutralize it, right? But in the average American, and I would say 70 to 80% of people listening to this, they have low diversity in their gut microbiome. Their mucus layer in their gut is dismantled to a certain degree. Their gut is leaky. The immune response in the gut is compromised. They're not making enough secretory IgA. And their liver is undergoing high degrees of toxicity, right? Something like 60% of people have fatty liver, adults in the US. So all of those mechanisms to protect us from this LPS coming through the lining of the gut and entering into circulation gets compromised. And as a result of that, when we eat food or we do anything almost, you get stressed or whatever it is, you get a flood of LPS entering into your system. And when LPS enters into your system, it creates havoc throughout your body. There isn't a single chronic disease that I can think of that's a major chronic disease. Like, let's take the top 10 chronic illnesses that kill people in this country. There isn't a single one of those that LPS is not making worse. if it's not the actual cause of the disease, right? So LPS interferes with everything in your system. And if it's allowed to leak through into your circulation, it becomes the most toxigenic thing you experience, right? In fact, there was a 2015 publication in the Frontiers of Immunology, and they reviewed all the papers and science associated with this. And those authors concluded that the leakiness in the gut and the translocation, that's a term used for LPS going from the lumen into circulation, the translocation of LPS was the number one cause of morbidity and mortality worldwide. It's the number one killer worldwide because it starts off the process of chronic disease.
How do we solve that? I don't
Yeah.
even know how to ask that, even like more layman's terms. Like, how do we help that?
Yeah. So actually, I've published at least 2 human clinical trials on this showing that we can dramatically reduce the translocation of LPS from the lumen of the gut into circulation by resolving leaky gut, right? So it's really about the barrier of the intestines and how you fix it. Number one, fiber becomes really important. This is another reason why fiber is so important for your health, is because when your saccharolytic bacteria break down the fiber, they produce butyrate. Butyrate is something that fuels certain cells in your lining of your gut called goblet cells. They produce mucin, that mucus layer that is really important to trap the LPS, right? Now, on top of that, fiber and the right probiotic, like the spore-based probiotic, for example, will also increase the diversity of the microbes in your gut and all the beneficial microbes. One of the things that occurs when you fix the diversity of microbes is that they interact with your immune system to upregulate the production of secretory IgA. That's the immunoglobulin that also binds the LPS in the lumen, right? So you've got the fiber and turning that into short chain fatty acids that produces more of the mucus layer that traps the LPS. Then you've got the higher diversity of microbes that interacts with the immune system to increase IgA that neutralizes LPS. And then you've got probiotics like the spore-based probiotics that enhance something called tight junction proteins. Those are the proteins in between the lining cells that keep them cinched closed so that it doesn't, even if it doesn't get neutralized in the mucus, it doesn't leak through. And then if anything does happen to leak through, with enough fiber, polyphenols, and a healthy diet, your liver is going to be healthy. And if your liver is not healthy, and everyone should get their livers checked, right? They should do a liver scan called a fibroscan and see if you have any degree of fatty liver. And about 60% of Americans, adult Americans, have fatty liver. And if you have fatty liver, then you need to talk to your doctor about solutions. But natural things are like turmeric works amazingly well. Milk thistle works amazingly well. Dandelion root, ginger, right? All of these things work amazingly well to improve liver health, right? So you need your liver to be extra healthy. So because then what you want is you want your liver to make your HDL3, which binds up the lipopolysaccharide, right? So just those few things alone, increasing fiber, polyphenols, take a spore-based probiotic, check your liver and make sure your liver is healthy. If it's not, support the liver. Just doing those things alone. And then one more thing that is kind of counterintuitive is exercise, right? So weight training, actual resistance training, right? So when you lift weights against a resistance, it releases a set of chemicals called myokines from the muscles. These myokines actually go to your gut and seal up the lining of your gut and reduce inflammation in the gut, right? So add a little bit of weight training and make sure you get an adequate sleep. And like what we talked about earlier, meditation, manage the stress, and you're golden.
Yeah.
Lipopolysaccharide is no longer an issue.
Love it. Yeah. I think weight training's like the thing over coming into like, really big, like shining star over cardio, where cardio used to be king or queen. So, but okay. So leaky gut, you need to clarify something. Leaky skin.
Yes.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah. Funny enough, it's exactly what it sounds like. So your skin is an absolute barrier, right? It's designed with multiple layers of cells and all kinds of structures to make it like a brick wall. Your gut is actually a little less of a barrier than your skin is, your gut lining, because your gut is a semi-permeable barrier because you're supposed to let all these nutrients in and all that, but you're not supposed to let bacteria and toxins in. Your skin, however, doesn't want to let anything in, right? And so it's a multi-layer, very dynamic barrier. Now, what happens over time is as the microbes on the skin change, and the microbes on your skin are responsible for maintaining the barrier structure of your skin, right? So if the microbes on the skin change because we do all these toxigenic things to ourselves, we use antimicrobial soaps all the time. We've got personal care products with all of these parabens and microplastics and, all of these things that hurt the microbiome. And our diets aren't rich in the right types of foods, right? We need enough polyphenols and carotenoids and all that to build the skin. So as our skin microbiome diminishes over time, so does the barrier function of the skin. And then things can actually leak through the skin and enter into circulation, causing havoc in the body. Let me give you two really important examples of that, right? So number one is something called the atopic march. So kids, we have a bit of an epidemic of eczema, right? So many kids are born within the first 6 months are starting to have eczema lesions on their body. And eczema is a form of dermatitis, right? So drying disruption of the barrier of the skin. Now, kids who have eczema have 8 times higher risk of developing allergies and food sensitivities than kids who don't have eczema, right? And you might go, well, what the hell's the connection there, right?
Yeah.
How is it eczema on the skin create allergies and food sensitivities? Well, that's because the allergens in the environment and the food compounds of protein, say peanut protein, for example, leaks through their skin because the barrier is compromised, ends up in circulation. If the immune system encounters an allergen in circulation, it freaks out and it attacks it with this full inflammatory response. If it encounters it in the gut, then your microbiome can allow it to become tolerant of it. That's called oral tolerance, right? So that's why you don't want to introduce antigens through the skin, because your immune system goes, this thing is invading my barrier. It's a bad thing. I'm going to attack it anytime I see it. When it comes through the gut, it's coming in the context of the microbiome, and the microbiome can actually go, you know what, immune system, don't attack that. That's normal. That's part of our food. You don't need to attack that. So the microbiome trains the immune system for these things. So if it comes through the skin, it doesn't have that training. Now, another example of that. So this is kids with eczema, allergies, and so on. There is the longest longevity study ever conducted, still going on today. It's been about 65 years that it's going on. It's called the Baltimore Longitudinal Study of Aging. They took people 60 years ago that were in their 20s, and they decided we're going to follow them for the next till they die. What they've done is they've followed people from their late 20s and early 20s all the way till they pass away. And they're doing biomarker studies, following their lifestyle, doing all of this to figure out what is driving aging and age-related dysfunction in people. And they found that the biggest predictor of age-related disease and mortality is skin health, right? Aging skin, which is wrinkles, dryness, thinning of the skin, hyperpigmentation, and all that, occurs about 7 to 10 years before internally the system starts to get corrupted, driving towards chronic disease.
If you're enjoying the conversations we're having here on Toxic-Free with KB, please send in a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and follow us on YouTube and TikTok at Toxic-Free with KB. And don't forget, we're on Instagram at toxicfree.kb. What I'm kind of getting from this is that internal consumption, gut microbiome, leaky gut, all the things that we're consuming kind of exudes outwards, and that'll show the aging process. Am I getting this right? Or is it vice versa?
That's the beauty of it. It's vice versa. So the original thinking was that because your skin looks age, and that becomes a predictor of internal disruption, that the skin is really a reflection of dysfunction on the inside, right? But what they actually found was that the disruption to the skin, which makes it look age, actually comes first. And the disrupted skin is acting as a permeable barrier to allow the toxicants from outside to go in and cause massive amounts of inflammation.
Wow.
So the disruption to the skin and the aging of the skin occurs first and becomes an independent risk factor for chronic disease. This is a completely new paradigm, even in the world of functional holistic health, right? So what that means is we really have to start paying attention to the skin as an organ, what it is, we look at skin merely as a veneer. And we do whatever we can to make it look nice, right? Whether we use fillers and Botox and makeup and everything else just to give it the appearance of health without really thinking about the actual health of the skin, right? It's no different than like doing superficial things to make your liver look healthier, right? When actually it's not functioning properly. So that's where we need a little paradigm shift where we need to start thinking about the skin from its health perspective. And how do we make skin beautiful by making it healthier, not just appear beautiful?
Okay, we're going to have you back on for a whole deep dive on this topic because
Yeah.
this is like this is like jumping into the deep ocean. What can people take away, like one hot tip that they can start applying to get healthier skin?
Yeah. A couple of things. One would be start to reduce the personal care products that you use that have things in it called phthalates, benzoates, parabens, all of these chemicals, right? Fragrances, right? Which are really problematic for the skin microbiome. So as much as you can, start cleaning up your personal care products. That becomes important. And that might take a process. There may be some time associated with that, but it's fine. Make little baby steps. Get to a point where you're using cleaner lotions, cleaner soaps, cleaner other personal care products. The second thing is we'd actually developed this serum called SIV, S-I-V, that can really help modulate the microbiome of the skin because ultimately it's the microbiome of the skin that determines the health of the skin in large part. Just like the microbiome of the gut determines the health of the gut, right? These microbes are playing a critical role. So that's something they can start looking into as well. And then we can dive into whole other areas after that.
What I want to know from your end, in the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think is going to be the thing that we should actually be like focusing on as far as like living or trying to live a toxic-free life?
So over the next 5 to 10 years, and I think it'll go on even longer than that, is really becoming conscious of our ecosystem, right? These microbes that drive most of our functionality, the microbes in our gut, the microbes in our skin, the microbes in our lungs, the microbes in our eyeballs, for example. We're starting to really understand that it's the microbes in our system that drive functionality. And when the microbes are disrupted, we lose function. And when we lose function, we create disease, right? So getting really good about understanding what supports the microbes becomes important.
Kiran, what is your everyday non-negotiable?
My everyday non-negotiable would be movement.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Kind of movement.
I love being outside, even when it's not as pleasant as it should be, or you'd like it to be. Getting outside does a couple of things, and moving outside. So just walking, throwing on a weighted vest, for example, and going for a walk, taking the dogs out for a walk, going on a little bit of a hike, and there's hills and things that we can go work on by my house. There's a couple of benefits to that. Number one, it reduces stress, so it burns off cortisol. Number two, it provides exercise, which is important. Number three, it engages you with nature, and getting exposure to microbes in the natural environment is one of the most powerful things you can do for your microbiome. So that becomes really important. I am prescriptive about it, meaning I prescribe myself like a medicine. Go out 3 times a week minimum, 30 to 40 minutes at a time outside.
What is one easy toxic-free habit we can all start practicing today?
Yeah, so one easy toxic-free habit that we can practice would be reducing the amount of processed chemicals that we're consuming in our food, right? So it's super easy. And just pick a category like drinks, right? So people consume all kinds of stuff all day long. You're going to have to eat or drink something. And you may have a habit of wanting to drink this thing, whether it's an energy drink or something that you normally consume. Make an effort to either reduce it or eliminate it from your system, right? If you look at it and there's 45 ingredients in it, let's reduce that in some form or the other. Cut it back to half. Cut it back to 25% of what you're consuming. And that will create this cascading effect of slowly reducing toxigenic exposure within your system.
Kiran, thank you so much for, I'm already looking for a part 2 and part 3 coming on here. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I want to know, where can everyone find and follow you?
Yeah.
Chime in, start the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. They can find me on Instagram at Kiran Biome, Kiranbiome. I'm on Facebook as well, but I think everything that happens on Instagram automatically ends up on Facebook, which is how I'm there. But I have a lot of talks on YouTube and all that. And so if people put in my name, Kiran Krishnan plus microbiome, they'll find all kinds of lectures and talks that people have very kindly uploaded to YouTube. And then I'm also teaching a course for consumers to really understand their gut health. It's called Build Your Resilient Gut. And it's like a 6-module course that you can just do at your own pace. And it really gives you an understanding of your gut, your microbiome, what can go wrong, what it feels like when things are wrong, how do you track your symptoms and figure out where the issues are, and then, of course, what are all the solutions that you can do, right? So that one's been really fun to do as well.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Now it's time for hot habits. My hot habit for today is, get ready, you're not going to expect this one, energy conservation. What? Energy conservation. How am I exerting myself every single day? Social media, phone calls, junk email management. Hello? Are you like in this world with me where you're constantly staring at your emails and you're like, this is junk, this is junk, this is junk. And then it's like 500 emails later and you're like, how much time did I waste just deleting the email? So energy conservation, easy as that. Also, are you exerting your energy on people like strangers that you don't even know? And you're like, oh, I feel bad for them. Like, don't distract yourself. Stay focused on the prize. I know it sounds selfish, but you've got to really like know that there's a lot of distractions, a lot of disruptions out there in the world, and it is sucking your energy. That's why you're tired at night. That's why you're grumpy, and that's why you're irritable. So what are we going to do about this? Just stay in your own lane, folks. And remember, everything's gonna be okay. Now moving on to my trendy trends. My trendy trend for today is total plasma exchange. Have you heard of this? Total plasma exchange, basically TPE, is a medical procedure that removes all of a patient's plasma, yes, the liquid component of blood, and replaces it with donor plasma or a synthetic plasma substitute. So it is said to treat autoimmune, drug overdoses, certain types of cancer. Please check with your physician first before you even consider this. And also antibody-mediated organ rejection. I know it seems really complicated, but how it's done is they insert an IV into your system, they remove the blood, basically a certain amount particular to the patient. The plasma is separated from the blood cells. The plasma is removed and discarded, and then the replacement occurs, which the blood cells are returned to the patient with either donor plasma or the synthetic plasma. Okay, guys, this one, you do have major risk of infection here. It costs about $5,000 to $10,000, and anemic patients, I think you need to be very, very cautious of this. So don't just like go out there to a little clinic and say, I want to get total plasma exchange. There might be certain risks over the rewards. I'm still researching this. I'm not sure. I just know it's a very hot topic right now. So please check with your trusted doctor that knows your medical history and also know your body before you do anything like this. So it's up in the air. Let's see how it occurs over time. But there you go, folks. Thanks for tuning in as always. I appreciate y'all so much. And remember, you're doing your best and your best is great. See you next time. Thanks for watching Toxic-Free with KB. Please subscribe to the show, comment below, and check us out on Instagram at toxicfree.kb and TikTok at toxicfree with KB. See you next time. This is a Kilo Bravo Media production.